a little bit. And there we go. And so, yes, again, thanks everyone for coming in and welcome to a beautiful Wednesday morning. Some crazy storms yesterday. I hope everyone stayed safe and didn't lose power and watched the hail come from the heavens. But yes, it was quite the spectacle. But today is supposed to be a little better, possibly a little warmer, a little breezy, but still nonetheless a good day. So again, after you finish some of the work that you're supposed to do for the class, like I said, no new projects this week, and if you're caught up, you have nothing really except for just paying attention to the lessons. Make sure that you go back and finish all your past work. Like I said, I sent those emails out yesterday, just showing you what you owed. And the administrators will be connected to our classroom this morning right after we're done here. All right. All right. So I want to leave a good chunk of time today to go over the sampling and logic. So let me just clean up my desktop really fast here. We'll quit out of that. We'll minimize this for now. And we'll go ahead and we'll pop open our project here. And this is our logic test project that we've been working on for the last, couple of weeks now, doing little bits and pieces here and there. So let's first talk about the sampler, because one of the things people have a hard time understanding is what the sampler is. So when we discussed the opening lessons of logic, we said that some of these MIDI tracks have a generator. So for instance, if I start a new track, and we'll go into software instrument really fast, and we'll add a brand new software instrument. By default, mine ends up being an empty one. So you can basically make your own. So you're going to pick from your library. I want to pick my piano. We'll pick a beautiful Yamaha piano. And you see piano starts to happen. If we look at it deeper, we get to see what piece of software is going to be generating the actual audio, the actual sound. And that's where the EXS24 and a number of other types of generators come into play. So the Yamaha Grand Piano actually is being generated by the EXS24. It's right over here. You could see it as the input on the MIDI track. We did kind of open this up and take a look at all the other ones that Logic comes with, Alchemy and the Drum Designer, which we want to talk about maybe tomorrow, Ultrabeat, which we discussed at length, other things here. But the EXS24 is probably the most robust one that is available to. It's the one that a lot of the signals are coming from. So let's peek into, let's open up a door here and look behind the scenes of what's going on in the EXS24. And so when you open it up, it looks like this, and it looks fairly confusing. It really does. And my first time experiencing the EXS24, I went, what the heck is all this stuff? This is crazy. Let's quickly break it down. Nothing, too in-depth right now, but we can see that there's a lot of stuff going on. At the top here, you'll see mono, poly, and legato. So let's take a look at, see. Okay, there's mono. Okay, not much difference there. Not much difference there for this particular instrument. But we know that when we play a chord, we're actually using a polyphonic, multiple keys, multiple tones, multiple frequencies at once. If we go into mono, do you notice that they're not playing together? So you can't play a chord in mono. In poly, you do play a chord. Let's see what legato is. I don't know if you can tell, but the first one I hit sounds the normal loudness. The second one, slightly softer. And the third one, even softer. So it is almost like a step. And if anyone that plays an instrument knows what legato means in the musical world, it means softer as you go up or down. So it actually steps you down in volume each time you do it. So that's what these little guys are. And like I said, when we picked the Yamaha Grand Piano, it came naturally with a poly, which allows us to play. Right? There are 30 voices being used. It means there's 30 samples being used in this. Oh, this is interesting. Unison. Not much going on there. This is a big section of this. Let's talk about where the actual sounds are coming from. So there is an actual note of value as a WAV file or an AIF file or a Logic specific audio file that is being generated and pulled in from a destination, probably most likely in the library. And so that sample actually can be edited as well as your entire piano. So there's a couple of things here like resonance and drive and key, the cutoffs, the roll-offs, and of course, high pass and low pass filters or high frequencies to low frequencies. And it gives you kind of like a step-by-step decibel rating, so high to low, and then almost like a little bit of an arcing curve here. These settings can be changed. Everything from the initial Yamaha grand piano sound that Logic comes with is customizable. You can go back and edit that at any point. If you look at this area right here, we're talking about level. So it's kind of right in that mid to full range level where I can hit a 127 velocity. And I can also change the scale of the key, which is cool. So really the default settings of the EXS24 here are pretty useful and probably will end up being what you're going to use. Let's take a look at the bottom here. A whole bunch of different effects that are built into this. So there is this destination selection. Every little bit of this can be changed. You can add new ones too. You could see that I have some empty slots where I can add more stuff. But in this case, there was a velocity effect change here, a low frequency oscillator, depending on what you're doing in regards to your pitch. So that's my pitch up and down. That's my octave. And I put my sustain, my mod on, and I can start moving around the pitch a little bit. So those are the controls on my keyboard itself. Another velocity and another cutoff. So cool little areas. And then again, you can add your own. And if you drop this down, you can do other types of data that MIDI can be edited with. Like I said, there's envelopes here. There's a hold. So you can add more to this if you don't already have enough of what you are looking for in regards to the effects that are basically pre-programmed into this. Now, down below, you'll see there's an LFO, a low frequency oscillator as well. Looks like it happens, I believe, somewhere below 4,800 hertz. But right now you can tell that the low frequency oscillator is off right now. And right now the LFO 2 and 3 are also kind of matching that. You could change the wave shape. So when we talked about simple waves, square, sine, triangle waves, sawtooth waves, those are some of the ways that you can do it. And it's the reason why we even learn that kind of stuff is to understand then what the shape of a wave is and what it means and how it can change the sound. If you recall in class, we actually listened to different types of waves and how even at 440 hertz, if I change the shape of the wave, the sound does change. The characteristics maybe becomes a little more edgy or distorted. And that's kind of what this is. So instead of having maybe just a nice flat sine wave at 440, that's the, sorry, this is the A above middle C here. I think, yeah, middle C. No, there it is, 440. That I could change the shape of that in one way or another. But this has to do with the low frequency oscillators. So when I have them active and on my controller, that's what they'll do. They'll change the shape as well as the pitch or the tone or whatever it is that your controller information is doing. Over here is some envelope information. So envelope we know is the start to end of a waveform from first attack to final release. So take a look at this. Check it out. Attack, decay, sustain, release. I wonder why we learned that. Well, because when you get into digital audio recording and sampling and things like that, there's going to be some of these processors that allow you to change how these envelopes are shaped, whether I change the attack, the decay, the sustain, or the release. You should know what ADSR means, right? So that's why we did that, earlier in the year. A very important lesson in how waveforms are shaped, how they sound at different shapes, and of course, an envelope of a wave from attack, decay, sustain, release, all those settings are here. And there's another envelope over here, actually, that's a little different. So your attack is down low, slow. Your decay is long. Your sustain is very short, and your release is kind of in the middle there. So it actually does change the way the signal sounds every time you play. This note has its own envelope. And so that envelope is going to be determined by the settings here in the EXS24. Like I said, a full range sampler. It looks very confusing on the surface, but when you look at it in pieces and bits and pieces, it actually starts to make a little sense, and we can tie it into previous lessons that we did and previous definitions and terminology that we worked on. Now, let's take it one little step further. Let's go even deeper into the EXS24. Like I said, all I did right now was click on the generator. I made a new MIDI track. I selected Yamaha Grand Piano. It, by default, when you select that, it builds your track for you. It builds a generator, and all we did right there was just click on the generator to get the look. Once I've clicked on that generator, I can go even further, deeper into where this sound is coming from. We're going to go into up here where edit and options are. We'll go to edit first, and look at that. Look at this. This is the full sequencer and the full sampler of the entire Yamaha Grand Piano. So this is every sound that is attached to. So this sound right here actually is its own wave file. This sound is its own wave file. This sound is its own wave file. Well, how cool is that? Every single note has its own distinct wave file that, when it plays together, creates the sound that you're looking for. So this is the entire EXS24 mapped out on the entire keyboard. Take a look down here. I'm going to just move the participant window around. So if you look down here, this is every single note. I could actually push it. I'm clicking on it. And as I click on it, you can see how it's mapped out here. And then it also shows you the exact wave file that is selected with that. So now I'm holding these notes down just for a minute. So take a look at what came up on the screen. It tells you the wave file name. It's a 44.1 16-bit stereo file. So it is stereo files. Interesting. And I'll get that back up there for a second here. Click on that and roll it over. And this is where it's located. It's located in the library, application support. This sound actually is coming from GarageBand's instrument library, sampler, sample files, grand piano, and then the file name again. So if you're looking at this at a programming, let's say file type sort of angle, what you're seeing is where that sound is being pulled from and what library it could be attached to. So believe it or not, if you don't have GarageBand, which I think pretty much all Macs come with now anyway by default, but if you don't have that, you may not have the Yamaha Grand Piano. I do, because this computer had GarageBand on it, and the sample library that was in GarageBand actually does migrate over to Logic. Now, there are very specific Logic-based samples. Let's go back out here really quick, and let's change the signal now over to a different grand piano. Seems a little more muted, a little, not as bright. Has a different characteristic to it, correct? It also is being generated from the EXS24. So let's click on that. Let's click on edit. And then let's see where the Dorfer is getting its signal from. And the Dorfer actually is a GarageBand file as well. So the Dorfer is a GarageBand file. And that's all I'm looking for. Is I'm saying to myself, well, where is this signal being generated from that I can make sure that I either A, have it in my library, or B, can pull it in from somewhere else. And yeah, you can pull in sample libraries from other places. Let's go through this a little bit. Let's take a look at how this is all mapped out. I'm going to go over to this one here. I'm not sure which one's Zone 28. And we'll just do one I can play. All right, that's this one right here. So that's the zone 80. So it's telling you where it's located, and that's zone 80 right here. Not that you really need to know that. Nope. It's a G, sorry. So zone 80, the file that it's pulled from, the pitch or key, in this case it's F sharp 2, which F sharp usually would mean something like that. But in this case, it's a sharp 2. So you could see that they're the same zone. Interesting. And also you could see where the key range is, F2 to G2. So you can see that. So all three of these notes are actually the same exact sample. I'm just pitching them. How do I know it's being pitched? Look at this, pitch. Let's say I turn it off. Now I'm pushing all three keys and it's the same tone. Interesting. So those three notes are the same exact tone, which is F, and it's being pitched one way or the other. In fact, I think it's probably F sharp, which is this. So I'm F sharp and I'm pitching it down to go to F, and I'm pitching it up to go to G. And you can see as soon as I get to G sharp, things change a little bit, and it's produced at an A. So what this sampler has done, in a sense, is it's taken the entire keyboard and kind of consolidated it. It's used, let's say, one file to represent three different keys. The root tone, which in this case was F sharp, and then it allows you to pitch it down one tone to F and allows you to pitch it up to G. And because we were not making huge changes to the pitch, it actually sounds pretty good. So one file is actually representing three different tones. Very cool. Those are three distinct wave files. You could see it pop up on the zone. 21, 77, 76. All right, 76. What if I went down to an F sharp? Ooh, 76 is still there. And F is a 76. So it's all the same zone, all the same file. We're just repitching notes in order to get that. You get the concept, right? So how they lay this out is quite interesting. And yeah, someone actually did come into this sampler and build this note by note, file by file, key by key. Let's take a look at these other little concepts here. All right. We have our name of the zone, which represents what's going on down here. We have the file that's then attached to that zone. As I mentioned, then we pitch it. So let's take a look at the other things. Its initial key is here as D sharp. So D sharp would be D sharp there, not D sharp 2, not D sharp 1. D sharp 2. Okay. And so it also goes down to D and up to E. And it's the same file. Coarse, fine, these are just small adjustments that can be made, probably semitones as we call them, to the actual original root key, in this case D sharp. We can actually have volume changes and pan changes for each note or each sample, and a full-on scale from -6 to +6, which is a pretty big volume change. We actually can assign these notes to groups. In this case, it's just to the overall group. You can see they pretty much are all attached to the same group, which kind of puts them all together in the piano itself, right? Because this is a piano, so you want it to be grouped together. The key range. So this is where that original sample makes a big difference. I'm going to set my D sharp 3 to a key range of being able to go to down to D and then up to E. So that's what this is here. Of course, like I said, we are pitching it because we're allowed to then take the same sample and pitch it down one tone and pitch it up one tone. But then there's these other things that are really not located here. And I want to show you what that would sound like if you did do it. So let's make this particular note, this D sharp, a one shot. So I one shotted it, and now what happens? All I have to do is hit it once, and it actually will hold out. I'm only hitting it once, and you could see the sustain, the total, absolute total playback of the uh, D, B Dorfer F3 D sharp AIF is going to play out. I'll do it again. It still is playing. So every time you touch the D sharp, did I not do the D sharp right? Right, whatever. Every time I touch the D sharp like that, it's going to start and play the entire sample straight through. We'll get back to that when we start sampling voices in just a few moments, but I wanted to show you that. There's also a reverse, which is actually pretty cool. And let's do a reverse on that, and here it is. And you hear it's taken quite a while for it to play in reverse. So it's actually flipping the envelope over. It's going to start from the release, move through the sustain, go to the decay, and then hit the attack. It's going to actually reverse order the sample. So I know it took a little while for that to kind of hold out. So I'll show you what that actually is going to be cool when you do sample voices. You're going to be able to kind of go backwards in the sample, which is going to be awesome. All right, so this is what basically the layout would look like. And then, of course, you can program it in down here. And like I said, this particular piano was programmed by somebody. And man, what is that an extensive amount of time to do? We're not going to quite go through that process. That's a lot to do. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start by erasing that sample. Basically, I'm going to erase the track, just make it much easier for us. And we're going to start from scratch. So we're going to go into software instrument, and I have it set up so it's a blank, completely blank instrument track that gets set up. See, if I push it, no tone comes through because I don't have a generator. Of course, I have to pick my instrument, and in this case, we are going to pick the EXS-24. We'll put it in stereo for now. You'll see that everything is blank. There's no sample loaded in here. There's nothing in the window. So I do not have my instrument that would be associated with the piano anymore. There are no presets up here, so you can't really load anything here. Where you're going to load stuff would be probably down in here where I'd hit the plus and I'd get a classic piano, and then I could change and cycle through my entire EXS-24 generators. These are the basses that it generates, the drums it can generate. These are the guitars it generates. So there's a bunch of different ones that EXS-24 handles. So that's accessible through here. I'm going to go back to nothingness because I'm going to do some sampling of my own. Let's take a look at what an empty sampler looks like over here in the editor. Wow, there is nothing here. There's no samples listed. There's no zones. There's nothing going on at all. I mean, I can't even create anything right now. So what I want to do is I want to create my own. I want to create my own samples. I want to create and sample things that are out there. I'm going to do it in two different ways. The first way I'm going to do it is going to be through my voice. So let's quit out of this. Let's go into my vocal track really fast and let's record something very quickly. Oh, that's going to give me a really bad echo. But that's okay. And then yeah, let's do this. Let's just record some vocal nonsense. There it goes. Blah 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 blah. This is vocal nonsense. This yob yip yob yip yob yip yob. I don't know what that is. Blah, 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 blah. All right, just a couple things here that we can mess around with, right? Just a few things that will allow us the ability to kind of cut up and edit and use. So let's do that. Let's do what we did with sampling with Pro Tools, right? We recorded an audio or we put some audio down, and then we used this edit window as like our canvas to grab samples and cut them up and load them in. What was this? This was what? I got to open up my thing here. There we go. This is vocal nonsense. Yeah, vocal nonsense. All right, let's start with blah, 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 right? That was a fun one. There we go. All right. So let's go in and start cutting this up and isolate it. What I like to do again is to zoom in, basically pull my edit right to the first attack, which is also very important because when you hit a sample, it starts playing from the first, or should start playing from the first attack, and should not start playing, you know, just nonsense or nothingness for seconds. And then let's try to isolate it here in the back end to the final release, which looks somewhere to be around right here. So we'll Command T it there. And then we have our vocal sample. Now I can't just throw it on in there just like this. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to end up making this its own audio file. How do you make something its own audio file? Well, you can go into the project area here, which we know has a list of all of the files. We can select that file again, and then we can use the menu that we went over a couple of weeks ago to export that file. So let's do that. Let's save these regions as its own WAV file in our test folder. In fact, I'm going to actually probably create a new folder for samples, because that's what we do, samples. And then, yeah, how come it's not letting me create? Oh, because I already have a samples one. Okay, samps. There we go. And we'll name this because, again, you want to stay organized. So we're going to name it Blub, B-L-U-B, Blub. And of course, I'm going to keep the same sample rate and bit rate, keep it as a WAV file. I'm going to hit enter. All right, and now it's its own audio file. You can see it right here. It actually jumps into the audio files folder as Blub. All right. Okay, now let's go back into our sampler and let's have some fun. We're going into the XS24. We're going to go ahead and jump into the edit. And let's see if we can pull it right in from here. And look at that. I can actually pull it in right from the audio files window over here at the project files. So these are actual audio files in the audio files folder that you have access to inside of the software itself. All right. Let's see what happens when I push my key. I'll turn it up a little bit so you can hear it. So that's fun, right? That's kind of what we did in Pro Tools. We were able to bring in our sample and basically program it into our board. And that, again, presents a really good, signal and our ability now to use MIDI to control that sample. Let's start going through some keys here. So you'll see that my window actually is set up so that I have every single note in the entire keyboard to trigger the blub. Okay, but I don't want that. I want a very specific range. So I got to get in here and actually try to grab that edge. And that's one of the downfalls of having this as a window. I can't grab it right now. Whoops. So what I'm going to do, instead of trying to pull this and edit this, I'm going to actually do it by the key range. So I'm going to do it from C1 to C2. So let's go in here and change the key range from C1 to, and you can see all of a sudden now I can grab it. See, there it is. So C1 to C2 at my high range, C2. All right. And now you see that I can only access these in that area. Let's move this up to C3 and C4. And that's what's the other thing about it. I can actually grab them and move the entire range. And you could see how this is allowing me to pitch our notes and program them in a very specific range on the keyboard. All right. So I can, obviously click on them here, but I can also use my keyboard and trigger them there. Let's go and add more to this, because really it's not just about sampling one thing like we did in Structure Free. It's about the ability to program all of these samples across the keyboard and trigger them as if it's its own instrument. So let's take a look at that. Let's save this, X out of this. And yes, we are going to save it. And we'll just save it into here as the test one. And we're saving our EXS signal. And so let's go and cut up another piece of audio. Let's see what this one is.
This is vocal nonsense.
Okay, so I'll take that. Again, I'm going to try to zoom in to make sure I get the first attack. We'll do T, and then we'll go to the back end here and hit T. I have my audio clip now all set. So I'm going to save that as its own file. Again, I just click on it. I can come over here to my library or my project and go to File, Save Regions As. I'm going to make this one Nonsense. So it's another sample. This one's called Nonsense. Go back into my EXS24, hit Edit, and drag my sample in. Just like that. Now, this one, again, by default, lays out across the entire thing. So So that's, you know, part of what sampling is. Basically holding a key down will play it all the way through. Let's program it to a very specific part of the keyboard. This one I'm going to put from C, let's say, yeah, let's do C sharp 4 all the way up to C5. So on the low end, I'm going to do C sharp 4. And then on the high end, I'm going to put it as C5. All right. And again, it gives you a nice little bar. So now I have this area here where I could do this. And then I have this area here where I could do this. So that's what it does. It allows you to go through and create a mapping and a layout of all sorts of sounds, and allows you to change that. So, you know, you can always go into the key range and type something in and then reroute it and move it around. So again, if I don't want it to be just that, if I just want it to be maybe 4 or 5 keys large, I can go ahead and just use my little trim tool here to basically determine the key range. And then, of course, I can click them on and just test them. But then, of course, it's programmed into my board. So that's what we can do. So it is pitching right now. I don't know if I'd want it to pitch. So let's take the pitching off of both of these. All right. So both of them now are not going to be held by notes. It's just going to be, doesn't matter which one I hit, it's all going to be the same. Same thing up here. And that's fine. And that's kind of where I was going to go with this anyway. So let's keep the pitching off for now. And then that allows me to. Let's do something else. Let's see what One Shot does with this. I'm going to hit the C3 once, and it plays it straight through. That's what One Shot is. All I have to do is hit it once. I don't have to hold it down. I don't have to hit another note. I just touch it once, and it actually triggers the entire sample from start to finish. What about the nonsense? Here it is. That no matter how many times I trigger that sound, it will play all the way through every single time. That's what One Shot will do for you. Let's hear the reverse now. I know we were all anticipating what reverse is going to sound like, so here it is. I didn't put that one in reverse. Let's put that one in reverse. And obviously, yeah, it does play it in reverse. And you could have multiple versions of the nonsense in this. Let's pull another one in. It's just the same sample. This time we'll change the key range to be C3. Sorry, what was it up to? B3. So C3 to, let's make it C4. All right. And we can move that now that it's here. And I'm going to leave this one pitched. And I'm going to have this one as a one shot and not reversed. So I can now trigger. So by using some of the options in the EXS24, I'm able to kind of get different sounds, and you can multi-stack and build these. You can have a blub, not reversed. You could have a blub that is reversed. You can have a blub that is pitched, one-shotted, and reversed. And you can just keep dragging in these samples over and over again to get all different sounds. So again, to kind of reiterate, this sampler really gives us this huge amount of ability to build things from scratch. That's what we're looking to do. I don't want to just use a piano. I want to use my piano. I want to use my grandmother's piano that was in her living room for 40 years that kind of doesn't sound right, but in a way it has its own beautiful tone and idea. So what would I do? I would take a microphone. I'd go to my grandmother's. I'd play a C. I'd record that C. I'd play a D or an F, and I'd record that F. And then I'd start programming them in piece by piece. And maybe I can give myself an entire octave that I can work off. And now I have at least maybe 1 or 2 octaves of my grandmother's piano sampled, something that no one else could have, something that no one else would have. Again, making your project, making your production more unique. Very, very, very cool idea. Before we go any further, anybody have any questions to this point? Because there's, like I said, a lot of stages and a lot of layers we're going through here, but it's a really cool process if you take the time to do it. The ability of this software is unbelievable in this regard. This is what Logic really was built to do. I know Pro Tools has the same ability. Structure Free is a great little tool. And if you actually take the time and buy Structure, you can actually do a lot of stuff like this. But this actually comes with Logic. It's with the cost of the software that you have the ability to do this. This wasn't an add-on. This wasn't a third-party plugin. This wasn't $400 on top of the $200 you spent on Logic. This was in there. And all of its ability is in there. And that's why things like a digital audio workstation, may be good and put to good use in this situation, but may not work as well in this situation. Or over here in the studio, Pro Tools might really do well. But in a home studio where we're creating electronic music and sampling, Logic might do a little better. Or if we're working in post-production and doing filtering of sound and trying to get, noise and distortion out of signals, maybe Audition would work better for that. There are so many reasons why you would have multiple softwares, and it really does help, but you got to know how to use them, and that's the thing. And we're trying to make the connections between Pro Tools and Logic throughout the year, and even tying in Audition here and there, because they all have their own, unique purpose in this world. This is one of the things that really stands out to me for Logic. It's been the thing I've used many, many times. Let me just check to see if I can find a sample. And no, not recents. Let's try this. Let's see if I have a drum sample. Let's see. I think it was TBS Kick. I don't think it's going to be on this. I might have to grab my external hard drive. You know what? Let me get one of my helpers. Mr. Mac, can you go up upstairs in my room and get me the silver hard drive? It looks like a box, has a white cable with it. It's on top of the iPad that's right next to my laundry basket, I think is actually next to. Silver box and white cable. Let's see if he can do this. This is a 6-year-old at its best. Give him very simple instructions. There's a silver box with a white cable on top of my iPad next to my laundry basket. Let's see if it works. So I have some samples on that. And what I've done over the years is I've collected some drum samples that I like to use in some of the projects that I work on. One of the things that I had done years ago is produced a bunch of songs using these samples. And yeah, it is ripped off from somebody else. Somebody else did record that drum sample. But what I'm able to do using the EXS-24, oh my God, he did it, folks. Ladies and gentlemen, he got the silver hard drive and 2 different cables, but one of which is the correct one.
Well, yeah.
Okay, thanks, buddy. See you later.
Look at that.
Yeah. There we go. So I'm going to try to find that sample here on this hard drive. And while I'm plugging this in, if you have any questions, ask them. I'll answer them as we go along here. The EXS-24, like I said, is one of those things that kind of really changed my views on how Logic could be a useful tool in the audio industry. Up until that point, in my college career, whenever we used audio editing software, we were pretty much using Pro Tools and maybe like an early version of Sony Acid Pro or SoundForge. And there's a couple of them like that from Sony, but they never stacked up to what Pro Tools was capable of. And now with Logic, being this good, it's going to be difficult for any DAW now to catch up to this level of sampling that this thing can do. All right, so let me go in and let's see if I can find some samples. They may or may not be in here. Let's do TBS kick. May or may not be in here. I guess not. Thought maybe they'd be on this drive, although I'm not checking this drive. Yeah, it's not going to be there. Might be in my Pro Tools projects. Nope, not going to be there. Yeah, see, I don't have my entire hard drive from school here, which I do have a lot of the samples on. How about this? I know of a couple of songs that have drums without any other signal behind it. Tomorrow, what I'll end up doing is I'll get those samples. I'll re-record them. I might as well. I know what they are. I know where they're coming from. There's a really cool song by the Swellers that has a ridiculous snare that I love and I use all the time. And then there's also some sounds like what's that Eminem song? Cinderella Man. I usually sample Cinderella Man's drums, the claps and the kick. It's such a big booming signal. So I could take those drum hits, isolate them, and bring them into the program and sample them into my sampler. And that allows me to now create something from there. And like I said to you before, I wouldn't just leave them as is. I'm not that lazy. I'd end up probably putting them through some sort of filtering, whether it be changing the way they sound and react using coarse and fine, maybe even reversing them would be a cool concept. But also, I would probably end up coming in here to my MIDI track and not only just leaving the sample in there. Like I said, I wouldn't just be that lazy. What I would do is I would then, send that signal through a couple of plugins and see how that sounds. One of the things you guys may or may not have known is there's a whole bunch of MIDI effects in this software. Let me show you what that is while I will probably or would have probably ended up talking about it tomorrow. But now, since I don't have my samples at the ready, I'll do it right now. So we know our grand piano, right? Sampled. That's our Steinway. So a nice, bright sound. Let's take a look at some of the MIDI effects that are involved here. Even after you've sampled and processed using EQ, compressor, and some other, maybe time delays, you can actually do something a little creative. These are a lot of fun. These are a lot of fun to play with. So let's start with just quickly talking about the arpeggiator. Very cool. I'm just holding down the note. How cool is that? So the arpeggiator is basically going to play things in steps. So the pattern is here. You can mess around with that. There's some options here of note length and velocities and swinging. You can lay out your keyboard to match a scale. I'm not going to go too far with this. And then you can actually change some MIDI information. There's other stuff as well. I like to mess around with some of the presets of this. So you have some classic styles, some classic grooves, some complex grooves. Like, let's pick this one. So that's a really cool groove. I like that. What else can we do? Like, there's so many of these cycles that people have pre-programmed into here. Wow. Keep going. Let's do a 12-beat cycle. How cool is that? You get really into the groove if you kind of mess around with this. This is something I could spend hours doing, to be honest with you. It's just a simple piano, and I'm just holding notes down and changing up patterns as I go. It really doesn't take a piano player to do this, but the result is actually really very cool. So that's the arpeggiator. And like I said, these MIDI effects can even further change samples you've created in the EXS24. Let's do chord trigger. That's always fun. So again, presets are a good place to start. We can do guitar voicings and parallel chords and some extended harmonies. So let's do a major 6, 9, and 11. And so all I'm doing is hitting one note and I'm triggering a chord. I mean, that's very complex, probably a little too crazy. Now, as you're there, imagine me having two of these types of tracks. One is the arpeggiator running in its cycles, and another one is a chord trigger that's playing maybe some low-end subtle chords. And I'm just hitting two notes and I'm just changing my octaves. So like I said, a lot of cool stuff that can happen. That's just a, like I said, a very crazy chord progressions that they're using here, but they can be very simple and they can be very easy stuff that you're very familiar with. So if you're doing anything in blues and jazz or pop, this is pretty cool. I'm just hitting single notes. And that's just C. Cool as that, right? You don't have to play the chord. So that's one of the effects of MIDI that extremely useful, things that I can use all the time to kind of create more complex signaling with just basic stuff that I've sampled or recorded. Let's take a look at modifier. So not much going on there, but what this allows me to do is now modify the controls, things like a pitch bend or a mod wheel. So yeah, now I can assign other effects to other controllers on my MIDI keyboard or my USB keyboard. What else is here? Modifier was fun. I don't have the actual controller. Modulator. And I don't have, well, maybe I do. There we go. So right now I have a low frequency oscillator or low filter, whatever. And I'm using my mod controller on this keyboard to kind of bend. And how is it bending? Well, that is all coming from here in my LFO cycles. You can actually see the visualization happening of how it's bending up and down and back and forth. We could change, of course, from sine waves to square wave. So it's a little smoother, or we can make it a little dirtier. It's like really sharp and random. Those are fun to mess around with. And these do have a couple of this signaling here that's kind of fun, mess around with that. You can see over here on my mod wheel, the notes are here. I actually type into how I want it to be. That's pretty fun. Whoa. So messing around with that is a lot of fun. Like I said, these effects are a lot of fun. A note repeater. Oh, that's kind of cool. I'm just hitting it once. And that's the other thing. If you go as an opposite beat to that, if you're following the speed, then it's going to kind of sound like it's doubling. But if you alternate the speed, you can actually start to get some cool sounding patterns. And of course, these have a bunch of presets as well. So of course, whole way scaling up now changes the whole view. Ah, what is that? And I'm just hitting 1 or 2 notes here. I'm not going crazy with it. So that's kind of fun. Or you can go all the way up. Ooh. I'm just hitting 1 note at a time. You know, and there's a bunch of, you know. And now you didn't have to play that, right? A normal piano player, to get that exact signal, would have to play the entire 5-chord progression for every single time. Me, I'm using 1 finger and pushing notes. To me, that sounds like something in a movie. And I'm just messing around. These MIDI effects are so much fun. Man, like I said, I spend a lot of time messing around with them. Here's a randomizer. So nothing there. I guess I have to throw in, let's say, some pitch bend destabilization. So let's do. Wow, that's kind of crazy. But again, giving you signals and sounds that you won't normally get by just playing straight up samples from the XS24. So no, I don't have anything built here in the scripter. The scripter is actually your ability to go in and program on a computer level different things. But this has actually some cool presets in it, like drum kit designer stuff that we will talk a little bit about more tomorrow. Arpeggiator. Pretty cool, right? That's something that someone had to actually go in and build from scratch to get a result from. What else is down here? Some cool stuff here. And again, this is all in Logic. Octave wrapper. Let's see what that is. It doesn't look like that was doing much. Ah, I see what it did. It actually took middle C and programmed it to be every octave. Middle C, middle C, middle C. It's the entire thing is. So every single octave is the exact same octave. That's kind of cool. I never played with that one. We'll pick one more because, like I said, I could do this for a long time. Let's do stutter. Let's see what stutter sounds like. I'm wondering if this would be really cool for drums. What would happen if I programmed a stutter on a snare? Would it give like a really cool sound? I don't know. Let's try it. Let's throw this stutter effect onto an EXS24 drum kit. And let's put into the Brooklyn kit. And we'll put the stutter in. Go to scripter really quick. We'll go down the stutter. And now let's see. Cool. Let's see. Pretty cool. So that's something that I would probably end up messing around with a little bit. Let's invert the notes in a drum. Let's see. Maybe I'm too far down here. So that's a stick hit. Some of these samples are a lot longer, so I got to hold it down. It's really just a stick hit that's working. I don't know why. Guitar strummer. That's interesting. It seems like every single note has the kick with it. And it took away my octaves too, so now I can't play that. But that's kind of cool. So there's a kick, a snare, a ride, and there's something else going on in there. Pretty cool. So, I mean, again, messing around with some of these effects is a lot of fun, and they can definitely help you create, new and exciting things. My point to all this again was, yeah, I can start with this a boring Yamaha piano, but if I wanted to take it to the next level, I'd probably end up messing around with some of these MIDI effects. Let's see what Transposer does, by the way. I'm back to my piano, by the way. And now let's go, can't go wrong. Sure. So I'm playing a simple C. So it's C, E, G, but it's not playing that. It's actually playing C, D sharp, and A sharp, I think. That's kind of crazy. What else is here? Down an octave. So really it's just octaving down. That's kind of boring. And that's just octaving up. That's boring as well, yes. So let's see what else we got here. The last one is the velocity processor. So this is kind of fun because you can now have a little more control over some of the notes that are involved. Now, remember, you can always play these notes. You can actually play your whole performance and then add the MIDI effects later to see if some of the stuff can kind of make it different, unique to you. Let's see. Let's do make louder. And I'm really touching them very soft. So you can see that the velocity processor is making it louder for me, changing the velocity itself. And there's the soft one. And I'm pushing pretty hard now. Or you're hearing my voice pretty much over the noise now. So yeah, very cool, simple things that you can do to kind of take your performance from sampling to programming, recording, to programming, to mapping in the XS24, performing, and then adding that next level of effects that can really take that electronic composition you're making to the next level. I promise tomorrow I'll bring you some samples because then we can program them into the drum designer as well. And that's what we're going to be discussing tomorrow. Anybody have any questions about the EXS24? My son has a question. So you 16, 17, and 18-year-olds better have some sort of question. Yeah, Mac, what's your question?
Well, when you press like those three buttons,
Yes.
it's like do, re, mi.
Oh, okay. You were thinking that what I was pushing the...
Yeah. I'm thinking
Do, re, mi is do, re, mi. So what I was doing is do, mi, fa. No, do, mi, so. Do, mi, so. Right? My son's learning music virtually too, by the way. His music teacher puts out videos and teaches them how to hold tone and notes and knows about do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do. So that's what his contribution to today's lesson was. All right. If you have nothing else and no one else has any questions, again, please make sure you cut out some time today to make up work that you guys haven't done. I really want to start seeing that work. And like I said, our administrators are going to be part of our lessons from here on out. So thanks very much, everyone. Any questions, email me. Anything else you need to say, tell me out of class. Have a great day. Get some work done. Later.